Thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to test a 3D printed accessory for the Nintendo Switch that should help disabled gamers be able to play. I have a sizable library of 3D printed files that are supposed to help people with disabilities be able to game. Unfortunately, most of these aren't tested. Either they've never been 3D printed or they've never been really extensively printed and tested. Some of them don't have great documentation, so I thought it would be fun to pick one at random, print it, see if there's any tips and tricks to assembling it, see if it does what it says, if it actually works. And that way we can clean up the library, refine these files, maybe make improvements if they need to be made, and we can all learn something. Before I go on with today's file, I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. They help me make these videos. They help me help people with disabilities be able to play video games. I just really appreciate the support. You can find a link to that down below. So let's hop into it. Today, I've been really curious about this file for the Nintendo Switch. It's supposed to be a top-down gaming setup that can be really useful if you have a trimmer or missing digits, just a number of reasons. Unfortunately, the first red flag here is that there is no picture of a 3D printed example. So let's dig into it. I don't really have high hopes on this one. We'll see how it goes. Okay, here we are inside of Prusa Slicer. This is the software that we have to use to prepare the files to print, and this is where we first get a feeling of how these things are going to go. So let's bring in all of the files for this. There, you can see there's a bunch of files. Okay, so we have all these files. Let's spread them out and get a peek at them and see what we think. Let's move these big ones to the side and look at these little ones, because that's where problems are going to happen. Oh boy, right off of the bat. We have these tall, skinny pieces here. Those are going to be an issue. Let's try. Everything here needs to, it's like sitting up on tips. And we have these little tiny pieces. Those have to be a millimeter, maybe a half a millimeter. Here, let's try arranging things a little bit. We can lay these down flat. Get a feel for what they look like. These all need to be flipped over. Now let's slice it and see what it says. So this is on my Prusa Mark III's. Oh, I was afraid of that. Everywhere we've got these little holes. It's too fine. It's less than 0.4 millimeters thick. So less than a half millimeter thick, so it gets dropped. I could force it. I see it's not here either. I mean, these little pins are like maybe 1 millimeter thick. But you can see everywhere that there were these little pinholes. It's not going to print. This just isn't going to work. Even if I forced my printer to print those holes, they would be so weak they would just snap. That's a bummer. That's a big bummer. Okay, based on the fact that those little pins are too tiny, the little button holes weren't even going to print, we can safely say that this file is not even going to print properly. Many of the parts are just too small. It could really use a redesign or some other manufacturing method. Even if you were to print this on a resin printer, what you would end up with are some walls that are so thin that they'll snap pretty much immediately with any force. So I'm not even going to print this one. Unfortunately, we're going to have to fail this one. No offense to the creator, this is sometimes part of the process, but it doesn't need to be in the library because it isn't going to help anybody in its current state. So we're going to fail this one and remove it from the library. Now again, this is not a criticism of the creator of that file. Oftentimes, part of the process is uploading your incomplete file. It was for a contest, maybe they haven't revisited it, but I think this is an important step so that we know what works, what doesn't, and we can actually help the people who need it. Thank you so much for your support, for watching these videos, for supporting me on Patreon. Everything helps. Be sure to give this a thumbs up. It really helps my account grow, and I'll see you on the next video.